For today, we had the last 2 units to learn in this room. For this morning session, we will broaden our lens even further as we focus on environmental and integrated surveillance system. In this room, we already have our outstanding speakers from Universitas Gadjah Mada, and soon will be joining with us from Taipei Medical University, Taiwan. I would like to remind you that there will be a 20-minute Q&A session for each topic. For participants who joining us online, please submit your question in the chat box via Zoom. Without further ado, let us begin our morning session that will be led by our 5th moderator for the next 3.5 hours with Dr. Farah Yuliani, Master of Science, Doctor of Philosophy. Please show us Dr. Farah resume. A brief introduction about Dr. Farah. She is a head of the Master's Program in Tropical Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. She is also a lecturer at the Department of Pharmacology and Therapy, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And she is also a researcher in the drug development, molecular pharmacology, cyanotransduction, and tropical medicine. Everyone, please join me in welcome Dr. Farah.
Thank you for your very kind introduction. Good morning. Are you still have an energy today? Yes, because this is our last day lectures. Yeah, I hope you are still in us, and then tomorrow we will be maybe the happy days. Yeah, there are 2 field trips, and then I hope you enjoy the 2 days field trip. Yes, and then in the end of our summer course, we'll be more excited. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is because I also handle the summer course, so there is some spill the tea of our activities. So good morning, our distinguished speaker, Dr. Daniel. Thank you very much for your willingness to share your expertise, yeah, for our participants. And I would like to say hi online. Yeah, there are also the participants online. I hope you are also with us today. And then for today's sessions, we explore this topic for 3 complementary perspectives, yeah, environmental surveillance, and then the health impacts on environment pollutions that will be guided by Professor Chuang that will later join us, and the health impacts on data integration with the One Health framework. And for the first speaker, let us begin with our first speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Daniel. Yes, okay. Yeah, we can see here Dr. Daniel. So let me introduce him. Dr. Daniel is lecturer in environmental health and the Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and his work focuses on water, sanitation, hygiene, and environmental surveillance. He is also actively involved in national and international environmental health organizations and serves on the expert committee to environmental health issues in the Indonesian Ministry of Health. And today he will present environmental surveillance, water, waste, and vectors. Dr. Dani, the floor is yours.
Check. Okay, thank you, Dr. Farah, for the introductions. And yeah, good morning. Nice to meet you all here. And I know some students here. They also attended my courses in environmental health. So maybe some of the materials you know already. But for most of you, I hope this can refresh you a bit about the concept of environmental surveillance. As introduced before, that my expertise is actually water and sanitation and hygiene. So I will more focus on that. But Yeah, I had some projects on solid waste, but not many. So, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we will discuss it directly. So, yeah, and because I think I have 40 minutes, right? Yes. Okay. Okay, 40 minutes. 60 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How can I do this one? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the appetizer. How many of you, especially from abroad, have tried this one, bakpia? Okay. How's it taste? You like it? Okay. Yeah, we will start with the appetizer, but if you never try these ones, please buy. There are a lot of shops selling this bakpia. Yeah, okay. I will skip this one. Let me know a bit about yourself. So, especially if you're coming from abroad, where are you coming from? From Pakistan, okay. Sorry? Palestine, okay. So you? Sorry? US, okay. And other people from abroad, I know some students already. Yes? Pakistan's and are you from abroad as well? No? Okay, it looks like Taiwan. Maybe because we have speaker from Taiwan. Okay, yeah, I know some people also join online. So yeah, how many of you are familiar with environmental health? Any kind of topics related to environmental health? Anything? So, or water and sanitations maybe? Nope, you're not really exposed to water and sanitations. Okay, so yeah, I hope I can give you some ideas about it. And these topics that we are going to discuss today: water and waste, pathogen transmissions, roles on human health, and waste surveillance. And we have some short reflections after those presentations. Yeah, and don't hesitate to ask any questions, but we will, at the end, we have a Q&A sessions, but if you want to stop me at any times, just raise your hand and we will discuss directly, okay? Otherwise, you will completely forget everything that you want to ask. And yeah, okay, I have a short question here. So among these 5 items: sanitations, hand washing, drinking water, solid waste, and liquid waste. Which one has the largest effect on child malnutrition, and why? Hand washing facility. Why? Source. Yeah. Other thing? Any questions? Any thoughts on this? Why? Yeah, okay. Other things? All of them? They have the same power, the same effect. Okay, we will come back to these questions after this, so you will know the situations in Indonesia, which one has the largest effect on child malnutrition. Yeah, okay, let's start with the main course. If you're coming from abroad, please try gudeg. Sorry, it's very sweet, but just try it once and never try it again. Okay. Okay, let's start with the water, sanitations, and hygiene. Okay, I always start using this picture, and this is the situations in developed countries. When I open the tap, I can drink directly from it. But B and C, they are taken from rural areas of Indonesia, and the water looks clear. Everything looks fine. The taste is okay, smell, everything is okay. But the question is, of course, you cannot drink from that. But the questions why many people in low middle income countries can have the same drinking water services as
Recording
in
in
developed
progress.
countries. What is the reasons? Why you cannot drink directly from the tap? Even in here, UGM never open the tap and drink directly from it. But what is the reason for that? Contaminations, yes, of course, that's the main reasons, because there are a lot of contaminations in Indonesia. According to the data in 2021, 7 out of 10 water source in Indonesia, they're contaminated by pathogens, by E. coli. the situation's better in 2021, but I don't really trust the data. Okay, so never trust drinking water services in Indonesia. Never drink directly from it. Okay, I have a lot of projects on this, but yeah, never drink directly from it. 2 weeks ago I tested. I have a small portable water quality kits in my office, and I tested the bore well in my home in my home, and they are contaminated by E. coli. But when I tested mineral water like this or boiled water from the same boiled as from the well, and also the big usually in Indonesia we call it galon, so big mineral water, 19 liters, and they are free from contaminations. But from my bore well, they are pathogens inside, so never drink directly from the tap. But in some areas of Indonesia, I visited quite a lot of. I travel a lot of places in Indonesia, and there are some villages, there are some projects from the NGO. They have very good water systems, water treatments, and you can drink directly from the tap. So I don't put my picture here, but usually in my class I put it there. So you open tap and just drink directly from it. Okay, and they use proper and sufficient water treatment. But even in city, in Yogyakarta city, never drink directly from the tap, okay? Because it's contaminated. Yeah. Okay, I want to introduce you a bit about the service ladder of WAS. So there are some levels or ladders that are introduced by the WHO and UNICEF. So for the water, there are 5 levels, and the highest level, we call it safely managed. So either safely managed water services or safely managed sanitation services. So for the water, basically it means that you have a water source that are free from contaminations. This is something that we have as in US, for example. I don't know. Yeah, US. Can you drink from the tap directly? Okay, yes. In US and in many developed countries. So this is the ideal situation. When you open any kind of sources, you have bore well, tap on everything. When you drink directly from it, it's safe for you. And so this is the highest ladder that we have here. But in Indonesia, the situation is more or less, I forgot to put it. It's about, I think, 20% of it, they are can be categorized as safely managed. But again, I don't trust the data, okay? So never drink directly from the tap. Unless I can taste chlorine. It means that, okay, it's quite safe, then I can drink from it. But if there is no taste, no smell of chlorines, never drink from the tap. Okay, and so yeah, the purpose of this, yes, of course, we want to consume and use safe water, and yeah, for the safely managed sanitations, it means basically that when you how do you call this? How can I say it in I don't know how to say it in yeah, okay. When you shit, okay, when you shit, when you defecate, okay. When you defecate in the toilet, your feces will go down to the systems, etc. So safely managed means that your feces, they are safely disposed and will not harm the environment. So this is the highest level of the safely managed sanitation. And in hygiene, we only have 3 levels, and the highest ladder means that you have water, running water, and soap in your home. Okay, so it's very simple for hygiene. But for safely managed water and sanitations, they are more challenging compared to hygiene. So the idea of it, yes, as you said before, that if we hand wash our hand, if we do hand wash, it will prevent the pathogen transmissions, especially in the COVID situations. The number of hand washing, so the highest level of sanitation, basic ladder, they increase a lot because of the COVID situations. But there are a lot of research going on, and they said, okay, after the COVID, people start not to wash their hand regularly. Okay, so yeah. Okay, I want to introduce you a bit about the general concept of water services. I can categorize them into 2. centralized water services and decentralized water services. So in developed countries, in here, let's say in urban area, we have the centralized water services. So we have the water source, and the water will be treated in the water treatment plant, and it will be distributed to the house, and you have tap and you can use it directly. This is the ultimate dream of the World Health of the UN. Let's say we want to have this kind of services. So all the water, they are treated properly, and you can. That's why when you open your tap, you can drink directly from it. But in many situations, of course, in developing countries, it's not always like that. We have decentralized water services, or we call it self-supply. I have it here. Okay, I have the self-supply. So you have the point of collections of water source. We call it point of collection, means that any kind of sources where you collect your water, and then you bring it or you store it somewhere. You can boil it, you can do household water treatment, and then you have the final storage. Or if in our case here in Indonesia, in urban area, we have the big commercial water. So of course they are treated somewhere by the company, a commercial company, and then we drink directly from it. So this is the situations in many developing countries. We have the decentralized water services. And for the wait a second, let's go back here. Okay, yeah, for the centralized water services, the responsibility more on the water supplier. So they will take care all the everything from the water treatments, even until the distributions, the pipe distribution, etc. So the burden, let's say, the burden is on the water supplier. But if we talk about this decentralized water services, the responsibility is on household. So because they must make sure that they do water treatment, or they have a clean and hygiene water storage. Or if you have, like I said before, that you have the big gallon, you have to ensure that your water dispenser is clean, something like that. So the responsibility is on the household. But this is two opposite situations from these two water services. Okay, and for the sanitation services, I categorize them also into two: centralized and decentralized. So for centralized, from your toilet, it will directly be disposed to the sewer network, and then it will be treated and reused or disposed to the environment after they are treated. But in many decentralized in many developing countries, like here in Indonesia, we have decentralized, or we call it on-site sanitation. So after you defecate, it will go to the septic tank, and then someone will bring a big truck and will empty your septic tank, and it will be transported to wastewater treatment plant, and then it will be reused or disposed to the environment. So this is the situations in many developing countries in Indonesia as well. But in some rich areas in Indonesia, they start to use this centralized system. But of course, it's very expensive, and only rich people, only rich area, they can afford this kind of system. Okay. Let's continue with the WAS and pathogen transmission. Okay, before I continue, is there any questions that you want to ask? Nope. Oh, yes. A wastewater treatment plant. Yeah, plan. Any questions? Nope. Okay, let's start. Okay, let's continue with this WAS and pathogens transmission. Okay. I'm wondering, how many of you are never heard this term before? F diagram. Is this your first time? Okay. Really? You're my students. I teach it in the class. Okay, yes. I teach it, I always teach, I always show these diagrams in my environmental health or WAS class. Okay. So, the F diagram. So, this shows the potential transmissions from the human, from the source, feces, to the future victim. So, feces here, we have the F, feces also. All words start with F. So feces, it can transport it, or it can transmit it to the future fiction through several fluids. So from the drinking water, if it's not treated properly, it's not clean. And finger, okay, so your fingers can bring a lot of pathogens. And flies, of course, fields. So fields means that if you play outside, and let's say you have a pet and they defecate in the outsides, and then you play outsides, and then somehow you touch it. So yeah, fields. And vomits, it means that the surface here, vomits and flood in this flooding. And food, and it will go to the future fiction. So the sanitations is the first barrier of it. So if you have, that's why it's very important to have a sanitations, safely managed sanitations, because to make sure that your vessels will not pollute the environments, and everything flies don't touch it and everything. And the second barrier is hygiene. So, but the idea is, maybe there's a question. So should we just focus on sanitations and not considering the hygiene? The answer is no. So we have to do a kind of multi-barrier protection. So we have to do both. We have to ensure that we have proper sanitations, and we also practice a proper hygiene. So we have to do both. Okay. Yeah. So according to Bradley, there are 4 types of water and health diseases. So the first one is the waterborne. This is because there's a pathogen in the drinking water, and you drink from it. So it can cause diarrhea, hepatitis A, polio, etc. And water wash, because you have a lack of water, and then you cannot practice proper hygiene. And like a skin disease, trachoma, and water based, because there's a parasite in water, like a Guinea worm. I have the picture here. And also water related. So Guinea worm is common in Africa. In Indonesia, there are some locations, they are also, they can find this kind of cases as well. So be careful when you go to the field. And the last one is the water related. Yeah, this is kind of malaria, dengue, etc. My time is yeah. Okay, I need to be faster. Okay, and if we discuss about factor influencing household drinking water quality, there are a lot of things in the house that can affect your drinking water. The first one is because of, yes, of course, the water quality. So if you, I did some studies and try to correlate the water quality between water source and the storage, and there are positive correlations between it. So especially if you have the same source of your drinking water. I mean, for example, you have a borewell, and then you use the water from borewell for your drinking water. So there are positive correlations between it. And the next one is the recontamination from the environment, or the hygiene practices. So you can see, for example, this picture. If you allow pet going inside your home, and of course, it can introduce contaminations, pathogens to the drinking water. You can see, for example, this is a picture. I took it from a house in rural areas. There's a dog, and next to the how do you call it in English? A bucket. Yeah, a bucket contain drinking water. So of course, it's not. So the dog somehow can play nearby the bucket and can contaminate the bucket. And the next one is the recontamination from water storage. So it's important to have a clean water storage. I have a story. 2 weeks ago, we bring water quality tests to the people in northern Jogja, Sleman, Kaliurang. And then we give them a small water kit so they can test directly from they can test directly their water storage. And they show a picture. So they do it, and then they send a picture to us, and they say that, okay, this is from my boiled water. So there's a black color, and so it means that, of course, they boil it. Boiling can kill all the pathogens, but when you have a unclean self-storage, it will recontaminate your drinking water. That's why the person show us that in his container there is a pathogen inside. And also the household water treatment here. So yeah, if you it's not common. Yeah, it's common maybe in rural areas, but in urban, as I said, we have the big what do you call this, bottled water. Oh yeah, I want to say something. Okay, I put here a word recontaminations. It means that even though you do proper household water treatment, but if you don't have hygiene situations, it can recontaminate your drinking water. So it's important that to make sure that your storage and your surrounding environment, they are hygienic, and also they are clean to prevent the recontamination. Okay, I did some water quality model and mathematical modeling. We call it, we use the Bayesian belief network model, and we try to estimate what factors influence the water quality at home. And we found that the water quality water source critically affected the water quality at the storage, as I said before. And the next one, this is important, that the effect of household water treatment to improve the water quality is prominent in the case of better sanitation and hygiene condition. As I said before, that even though you do water treatments, but if the kitchen situation is not hygienic, of course the effect of the household water treatment will be diminished. So it's important again to do, we call it multi-barrier protections. You treat your water, and also you have to make sure that you have a hygienic situation. Okay, and this is the pathogen transmission from the sanitation system. As I said before, that in developing countries, in Indonesia, we have the septic tank. So we have to store the feces and before someone empty it. But the problem in Indonesia that and I think in many developing countries, that we don't really have a septic or fully sealed septic tank. It means that the feces can contaminate the groundwater, and you will, for example, in my case, I have the bore well. I will extract the water from the groundwater. Of course, it will contain pathogens from the unsealed or unsealed septic tank. And these situations happens in many Indonesian house. So if you ask me, how can I know my septic tank is fully sealed or not? The answer is whether the, how do you call this in English? Septic tank company, septic tank company. The how can I say it? Oh, wait a second, I forgot the Indonesia word for that. Usaha sedot tinja, bahasa Inggris apa ya? The feces emptying company. Okay, let's say. Okay, the feces emptying company. So you will know that your septic tank is fully sealed or not if in, let's say, in the last 5 years, the feces emptying company ever come to your house. If they never come to your house, it means that your septic tank is not fully sealed. Okay, this is the simple rules that the government use. At least 5 years. So in my case, in my home, I think 2 years ago, there's the truck comes and emptying my septic tank. But in many houses, even in urban areas, they are never emptied. So that's why it will contaminate the drinking water, the groundwater. We did some months ago. We did a study. We want to check whether there is contaminations. Whether there is a correlations between the how do you call it, the pharmaceutical ingredients in the septic tank and in the ground in the bore well. We want to check whether there is a correlations between them, and we found there's a correlations between them. So when people consume pharmacies, medicine, and if their septic tank is not fully sealed, it will we will found, let's say, how do you call this? We will find the pharmaceutical in the groundwater as well. So there is so it's not just about the pathogens, but about everything that you consume. It will, if it's not fully sealed, the septic tank, it will contaminate the groundwater. Okay, yeah, the environmental roles in causing disease. They can cause a disease. They can be a predisposing factor, so they can increase the burden, etc. They can be the transmission media, and also they can factor influencing the disease pathway. So there's a pathway, and somehow the environment can moderate or can influence the disease pathway. And according to WHO, 24% of the global deaths are related to the environment. So it's very important that we have to take care of the environmental transmission. Okay, I cannot find the data, but I tried to make it using Claude, so I'm not sure whether this is correct or not. But if you can see that when the number of safe drinking water and sanitation increase, it will reduce the number of the communicable disease death. So yeah, this is from the low middle income countries. I tried to find it, any journal, any report on this, but I cannot find it. So yeah, but I study in Netherlands, and they always show a graph showing that when in Netherlands they increase the water, the safely managed water surfaces from the 70s, 80s, and it is correlated with the number of the, I forgot whether the communicable disease or the diarrhea or everything. So yeah, but basically they show that in Netherlands, when you improve the quality of your drinking water, it will reduce the number of disease. So yeah, I think the situation is more or less the same in many countries, but we don't really have a proof about it. But yeah, hypothetically, we know it. This one, yeah. Okay, let's talk about the environmental enteropathy. I don't know whether you are familiar with environmental enteropathy or not, but many experts say that this is the main reason for malnutrition or stunting on children. Okay, environmental enteropathy. So you have a human, it's a bit difficult, intestines, okay, and if you have a normal intestines, the length is, the intestine is quite long, and the distance is so there's no distance, let's say they are closer, so it can prevent the pathogens going inside to your body. But if you have the environmental enteropathy, there is the inflammations in your intestinal, then we call it leaky. So there is a hole, and the pathogens can going inside your body. And the main reason of this, because of the repeated diarrhea, and of course repeated diarrhea because of the unhygienic situations. Okay, so I wrote a small report in a small writing in a newspaper, and I said that, okay, if the government really want, the Indonesian government really want to reduce the number of stunting, we have a program right now called a food free meal programs. And I said in the newspaper that, okay, even though you have free meal programs, but if you don't improve the environmental conditions in your home, you don't have, let's say, clean, safe water, sanitation, etc., it's useless. So okay, again, because of this, even though you have a nutritious food in your home, but if the situation is not hygienic, the baby can touch everything, and they can put their mouth into their they can put their fingers into their mouth, and it can introduce the pathogen, etc. So it's just useless. So that's why it's important we can have a free nutritious meal program in Indonesia, but we have to make sure that we increase also the hygienic conditions in our home because of this. Okay, environmental enteropathy is the main reason for the stunting. Yeah, there are a lot of studies conducted in Indonesia, and they found also that poor wash conditions are related to malnutrition, and also stunting and improved water source. Again, wash is strongly correlated with the malnutrition in children. I often conducted a wash study in East Nusa Tenggara province in Indonesia. This is one of the least developed province in Indonesia, and of course they have they don't really have a good wash situation in their home, and this province is I think until now is the highest prevalence of stunting in Indonesia. Okay, so there's a correlations between it. Yeah. Okay, we will come back to the first question that I asked at the beginning. Among these 5 aspects, sanitation, hand washing, drinking water, solid waste, and liquid waste, which one has the largest effect on the child malnutrition? I will use my previous study in Indonesia. So there, I will just show it. Okay, this is the overall environmental health condition in Indonesia. So we're using these 5 items, and we combine them. We combine them into one variables, and then we have this kind of map. So it shows that overall, let's say we are living in Java, in Yogyakarta. If I remember correctly, Yogyakarta has the highest score of the environmental health condition in Indonesia. So we are, let's say, in the safest province, let's say, so far. But if you move to the eastern part of Indonesia, they are not really have a good condition. I will go. Okay, so this is the results. Okay, if we so the composite score, meaning that the one variables combine that are built from these 5 variables, the composite score, they are positively associated with the nutritional status. So it means that in overall, in general, if you have better environmental health condition in your home, it will positively affect the nutritional status. So you will have your children will be not stunted. And safely managed sanitation has the biggest influence on nutritional status. So not hand washing, they are important. Drinking water, they are important. Solid waste, liquid waste, they are important. But sanitation has the largest effect on malnutrition in children. So and sanitation and hand washing are consistently positively associated with the nutritional status. And okay, this is important that the environmental health variables have a bigger influence compared to the socioeconomic conditions. Because many people said, okay, we have to increase the economic situations of a poor household. That is true, but above all, the environmental conditions, they have the bigger influence than the socioeconomic conditions. It says that even though you are poor, but if you have a good environmental health conditions, it's fine. You can have a good children. Okay. And this is the last one. Environmental health variables have a bigger influence compared to the food diversity. So we give food to the children, but at the end, as I said before, even though you give a lot of food, healthy food, nutritious food to the children, but if they don't have a good environmental health conditions, it's useless. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Okay, yeah, let's talk about the water surveillance. Yeah, John Snow. This is the first epidemiologist, the first researcher that introduced the word hygiene, sanitation, and because there's a cholera outbreak in London in 1855, and the source of it is the well contaminated by sewage near septic tank. And then when this guy know that, okay, the source is because of the source of the cholera is because of the unsafe drinking water, and he damaged the hand pump, and then the cases drop. Okay, so this is just a good example how WAS can prevent a lot of disease. Okay, if we talk about the drinking water surveillance, we want to have safe drinking water, but safe drinking water means that it's not only that you have a water that is free from contaminations, but at the same time, you have to do also a holistic risk management, because drinking water tests just analyze your water at a specific time. Maybe when you test it now and there's no pathogens, because the pathogens they are sleeping, okay, and you will not the pathogens. But 1 minute later, when you test it, you will find a pathogen inside. So it's not ensure. So zero E. coli, let's say, in your drinking water doesn't mean that your water is fully safe. So that's why we need to do a holistic risk management. We call it a water safety plan. I will show it a bit after this. So we want to make sure let's say the recontaminations from the environments doesn't occur. Okay, so the water safety plans mean this is a step-by-step risk management from the drinking water source to the to the consumer. But so it's not just the responsibility of the water supplier, as I said before, the centralized water services. The burden, the responsibility is on the water supplier. But we are, as a household, we have to take care also the situation in our home. So from the source until the water storage in our home, we have to make sure that we try to minimize the potential contaminations. Okay, the first thing that we need to do, we need to do a system assessment. We have to assess, let's say in our home, how is the conditions in our, let's say, water storage, whether there is a crack or not, whether when we look at inside there is a how do you call this, lumut, lumut bahasa Inggris apa ya? Can someone help me in Indonesian? Lumut, green things inside. Okay, I I don't know how to say it in English. Where is this green plant inside? Yeah, green thing inside, or whether the inside moss. Oh yeah, moss. Yeah, whether there's a moss inside your water storage or not. It's okay. A moss because of high organic pollutant in your drinking water. So that's why you have to ensure that because organic things, this is the food source for the moss, and the moss is the food source for the pathogens. So you have to regularly check your water storage whether there is a moss inside or not. So again, the first thing you have to assess the systems, whether it's clean or not. If you have a water dispenser, whether there is a dust, let's say, surrounding or something like that, you have to check it. But the problem in Indonesia, if you have water dispenser, it's very difficult to clean it because you cannot open it. Maybe you can open it, but in my place, and I visit many houses, we cannot open the water dispenser. This is the challenge because we never know whether there's a moss inside or dust inside or something. But okay, we have to assess the situations, and from that we try to do something to improve the situations. Okay, 3 minutes. Yeah, we have a sanitary inspections that help us to identify potential hazard or potential contaminations. There are a lot of form that can be used from the water source, pipe, water storage, even until the household level. We can use this form to help us assess the potential contaminations in our water system. Okay, for the global water surveillance, so there is a joint monitoring programs, WHO, UNICEF, they are collecting data from all countries, and they put it in the website. So you can see, if you check this website, and you will see the situation, the global situation. Even in your home country, you can check it, the status of the water services, sanitation, and hygiene services. And you will know, for example, in Indonesia, I cannot see it here, but okay. You can see the data here. So you will know how many water sources they are contaminated, etc. Okay, but the challenge for the environmental health surveillance, not just water, but environmental health surveillance in general, that there is a low political will, especially in developing countries, because our concern now, let's say in economic development, and we are not really care about the health. Yeah, we care about health, but about the environmental health is, let's say, we don't really consider that for now. So low political will, limited fund, limited lab, insufficient equipment, remote area, etc. So this challenge persists in many low middle income countries, including I think in Indonesia as well. So that's why we cannot really fully monitor the condition in Indonesia. In Indonesia, we have a big country, and in Java, it's more developed. Let's say we have a proper lab. We can do water testing. We can bring the test to the water sample to the lab. But in eastern part of Indonesia, they are remote. They are less developed. Of course, they don't have a proper equipment and lab, so you cannot really monitor the situations there. The funny thing is, there is a national drinking water surveillance in 2016. 2016. before the last one. And the funny thing that I found that the water conditions in Papua, in the eastern part of Indonesia, they have a better water quality compared to the western part of Indonesia. Okay, and we don't really. I'm not really sure about the data. So because I said, okay, maybe Java is more polluted because of the industry, etc. But I'm not really sure the eastern part they have better water quality because they have limited equipment, they have limited lab, etc. So yeah, this challenge persists in many low middle income countries. Okay, that's why in many countries in Africa, for example, they start to introduce the portable or mobile water lab. So you have you can use motorcycle and you can go to remote areas to test directly in their home, in their house. And you can just analyze it in the field and you will get the results. But the challenge for this is a kind of uncertified lab. So there's a trust because maybe people they don't trust. Okay, this is not from the governments. How can we sure that you do it properly? It happens in our case because we have a portable lab as well. I will show it here next to this. Yeah, we have a. Wait a second. Yeah, we have a portable water quality kit, but again, people they don't trust it. Not just even people, the health agency, the district health agency, they don't trust our equipment because they said, okay, this is not certified lab. But of course, we do it according to the ISO standards. So of course, they are done properly. But yeah, this is an issue that we have to deal with in case of we don't have a proper lab. Okay, my time is finished. Okay, so yeah, if we talk about the environmental health, there are a lot of factors playing around. So we have to see the problem not just for one perspective, but we have to know that if we improve one thing, it can somehow change the situations at the end. Okay, so we have to see, for example, here, if we reduce the poverty, somehow, of course, it will positively influence the perceptions of the people. They have more money to build better toilet, to have better access to drinking water, and it will positively influence their health. And if they have a good health, somehow in the future, the children, they can have a proper job and they can raise the economic standard of the household. So we have to see the problems from a bigger perspective, that all these problems, they are interconnected. Okay, so this is a complex system. So waste systems, we often call them as a complex system, meaning that they are influencing each other, and one factors influence other, and at the end it will influence back the factors. And also there are many variables and they are interconnected. We cannot really predict the situations, and also they are context specific. So the situation in Indonesia, it will you're coming from a neighboring country, for example, Malaysia or Timor-Leste, you have completely different situations. Even in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta, we have different situations compared to Central Java. So worst situations, they are context specific. So we cannot really use the same, let's say, the same policy, the same strategy across all situations. No, because we have to consider, for example, the environmental conditions, the landscape, the topography, the weather. So there are a lot of factors that we have to consider, even the social aspect. So for example, in Java, it's relatively easy to change people behavior related to waste. We can tell them, okay, you have to defecate in toilets, blah, blah, blah. But in many least developed area of Indonesia, for example, eastern part of Indonesia, it's difficult to persuade them to change the behavior because there's a kind of cultural things. Again, that context specific is very important. So we cannot really use the same strategy across all situations. Okay, that's all from me. Yeah. Is there any questions? Oh, moderator, I give back to moderator. Okay.
It's okay, Dr. Daniel. I already told you that it's okay. The time is yours, so fully you can.
Oh, okay.
But it is okay if you have any questions. Maybe you can raise your hand, or from online. Yeah, I invite. Okay, from there. Is it okay, Doctor?
From online
Sorry.
or from the audience here?
From maybe first from the audience
Okay,
here.
therefore, okay, maybe we start from you.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. My name is Ahmad Solihin. I have one question about portable water lab at UKM. Can you explain to us about what kind of the indicator that can be tested with this equipment? Thank you.
Can I have my slide? Yeah, in our lab we can test E. coli, we can test residual chlorine, we can test iron, nitrate. I forgot. Sorry. Iron, yes, iron. pH, of course. Turbidity, and yeah, I think that's all. Yeah.
Is it commercial or you create this portable lab?
Yeah, I credit myself for the research purpose, but we are planning to do it. We want to commercialize it. Okay, but again, the problem is because this is not a standardized lab. So that's why I said before that many people in Indonesia, they don't trust this kind of portable equipment. Kit, because they said, okay, this is not from the government lab, something. So this is the reason for that. But for the purpose of water surveillance, you just curious your water, you can do this kind of method, because it happens in many, as I said, in Africa countries, they start to using this kind of portable lab because they have limited certified lab. But the problem in Indonesia, I don't know the situation in Indonesia. We really love to have a kind of standardized something. Okay, standardized. If it's not standardized, we will not trust it. But yeah, as I said, it's difficult to have a kind of standardized. Not standardized, legalized approach for this kind of portable equipment.
Okay, thank you. And the last, if we interest with that portable water lab, can we Can we discuss in another occasion?
Yes, please. I'm happy.
Okay,
If
thank
you
you.
have any projects, this is everything that you want to do with related to WAS, feel free to contact me. I have my email, or if you can't find my email, just type it in Google d.danielugm and you will find my contact. And the funny thing, my name is Daniel, so if you type Daniel, you will never find me. Okay, so type d.danielugm and you will find me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
D.Daniel. All right, maybe you can contact us if you difficult to find Daniel. Okay, thank you very much for yes.
Okay, let's start with the ladies
Yes.
first.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jessica, and I want to ask, in emergency situation, whenever there's no safe drinking water, is it preferable to drink, for example, like untreated river water, or we should avoid it because the risk of waterborne diseases?
Yeah.
Because, for example, in Indonesia, we use river for bathing or washing. In that case, what the safest thing we can do? Thank you.
Okay, before I answer this, I just want to tell you that actually we have a, how do you call this? I forgot. We have another summer course next month related to the emergency something, and I will present something related to this as well. Was in the emergency setting. Okay, so in that situations, you have no choice. You have to drink, okay? But the main method that usually people do is chlorination. So they chlorinate the drinking water. So yeah, and of course it's very effective. You can drink directly from it, even though the taste and the smell maybe you don't like it, but you have no reasons. You have no option. You have to drink it, even in the situations that there is no. So you have only one water source, and there is no, how do you call this? Eight it coming and they use the chlorinated water. If you have no options, just drink because you need water. You may get diarrhea, but again, you have no options. You have to drink water, especially for, yeah, this is a very difficult situation, especially for the baby, because it's more risky for them. But for us, we have a kind of higher tolerance towards the unsafe drinking water.
And is it effective to use some like portable water filter?
Oh yes, depends. There are a lot of commercial portable water filter right now. You can you can buy it. For example, in my office, I have a small filter like this. So you can like a pipette, and it has a very small pores, and I can use the pipette in the river water. So let's say if I go outside, because I often travel to remote areas and I don't trust the boiled water and I can use the pipette directly from the river, from the water source, and it can remove all the pathogens.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Doc.
Okay, any other questions?
No, no.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Denny. I'm from Faculty of Biology UGM. So I have a question. In Indonesia, as we know, people must boil water or buy gallon because tap water is unsafe. In another side, sooner or later, carbon footprint from boiling water and plastic waste will pollute our water again. So, in your opinion, from one health perspective, how can environmental surveillance be used to break and fix this problem? Thank you.
Yeah, it's difficult questions. Yeah, there is a trade-off between you have easier drinking water source and also the carbon footprint. So there is a trade-off between them. So I don't know, but in my opinions, if you can have a small water filter and good water filter in your home, it's better compared to the gallon water. Okay, for example, in my parents' house, they live in Bekasi. I told them there is a commercial water filter from the Nasava. Nasava is a company from Indonesia, but they are owned by the Dutch people. So and they have so I bought this water filter in my home, and my parents drink from it. So they never buy the gallon water as well. So this is one of the ways to reduce the carbon footprints. But in my home in Yogyakarta, my wife doesn't really trust the filter, so we don't buy it. But this is one of the main things that you can do: buy water filter, so you don't need to, and you can just use a tap water directly into it, and then you can drink this from it. So it's reduce a lot of costs, reduce a lot of carbon footprint, so it's good for the environment in general. Boiling is not a good options for the environments because it's it's pollutes it costs a lot of money, and in many rural areas they use they burn the wood, so of course it create smoke in the house, so it's not really safe for the environment. So boiling, I will say that try to not using it. You can use either this kind of water filter. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe okay. From yes. This is the last from audience, and then after that we from Zoom
sorry.
thing.
Tadi yang di sebelah sana tanya duluan.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So two, yeah.
Sorry.
Two, it's okay for the audience in person here.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, doctor. My name is Faisal. I'm from anthropology. My question is, what do you think about riverside settlement, kampung pinggir sungai? We have Melayu traditions, Melayu communities living along rivers. This is commonly found in Kalimantan and also in Jakarta, Sungai Ciliwung. In this community, people often defecated directly into the river and also relate the river on dairy consumption, including water consumption. These settlements were usually located in rural areas with large and fast-flowing river. However, when people migrated to urban areas, they encounter river with very different ecological situation, but their practice at the same from the rurals. What your perspective on this phenomena? Thank you.
Yeah, there are lot of things in your questions. So maybe the first one is, yeah, this is a challenge in many slum areas in urban areas because how do you call this, river settlement? Yeah, okay lah, something like that. Okay, so people live next to the river, right? So this is the problems that people live next to the river, and if and it's very often that they are poor. So this area as our slum area, and it's very crowded, and they have no space for the septic tank, and they will discharge directly from the toilets into the river water. So it happens a lot. That's why the government, for example, in Jakarta, in Yogyakarta as well, they try to relocate people from this area. But of course, there are a lot of conflicts between them because they live for a long time in that area. So there are a lot of conflict. That's why, yeah, it's difficult. Or maybe, yeah, one of the strategy is they can use the centralized wastewater treatment. So all the houses, they are connected into one big septic tank, and there's a regular company will empty it. So this is one of the ways. But again, the problems, the people, they don't really monitor. Yeah, they don't really monitor and take care of the system, so it's broken. It happens a lot in Yogyakarta as well. The government, they built this kind of systems near to the river, but people, they don't take care of it because the responsibility on the people. So they have to pay the fee monthly. They have to check. Someone need to check it regularly, but they don't do it, and it's broken. And again, it will the vessels will discharge directly to the river. So yeah, yes. So we have to consider these things. The potential conflict if we relocate them. This is the best option for my opinion, because somehow you can revitalize the river. But there's a conflict, and you can use also the centralized septic tank. But people, they have to take care of it. So there are lot of options for this. But from the anthropologist's perspective, I will say that we have to discuss first with the local community, because we don't want to propose some things that they don't like. Okay, and it's important that so I also teach an environmental health behavior, and I always say that if we come to the community, we have to give them an options. So not just one options, but we have to give them more than one option. Then they have to choose, because the decision is on them. They have kind of responsibility to practice decision that they make. So we create kind of how do you call this, sense of ownership, let's say, responsibility among them. So not tell them, okay, this is the one thing that you have to do. We offer them some options, and we have some discussion, of course, with them. I hope I answer your questions because there are a lot of things in here. Okay, yeah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Muhammad Aksen Sultra. I'm from Indonesia, especially Saudi Sulawesi, and I work as a medical laboratory technology. Okay. During my 2 years in the Nusantara Sehat program, in every remote area of West Muna Regency in Saudi Sulawesi, I work with a community where open defecation in the sea was a long-standing cultural practice. Although our multidisciplinary team provided continued health education and successfully advocate for the construction of public toilet throughout the village government, many residents continue to defecate in the sea because they believe they could not defecate properly elsewhere. And according to the 2023 Indonesian Nutritional Status Survey, or SSGI, this area also had one of the highest stunting prevalence in West Muna Regency at around 38%. Okay, from the perspective of environmental surveillance and the One Health approach, how can environmental surveillance data be better integrated with nutrition and public health program to promote sustainable behavior change and reduce both environmental health risk and stunting? Thank you.
Yes, I love these questions. Okay, the problem in Indonesia is we have segregate survey for environmental health. So we have another specific survey for, let's say, WASH conditions, but we have another survey related to children health status, let's say. We have two separate surveys, so we cannot really link them. So this is the problem. So I will say that so we must have one specific survey that are, let's say, conducted by either Minister of Health or how do you call this, BPS survey agency, the National Survey Agency. But we must have one big survey that cover all things together. So not having one separate survey for each ministry. So this is the problem. So we cannot really, this is the challenge. We cannot really link them. For example, in the SKI survey, basic survey kesehatan Indonesia, Indonesia Health Survey, Indonesia Health Survey in 2023, we have data related to stunting and some related to WASH. But there's another survey conducted by the same ministry. So they have different parties in the ministry. They do their own survey themselves. Another survey, they have water quality data, but in the health the health survey, we don't really have water quality data, so we cannot really link the pathogens situations, the pathogen concentrations with the child malnutrition. That's the problems in Indonesia. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Daniel, there is one in person that would like to ask questions. Who? Which one? Okay. We give a chance for these questions, and then after that we move to the online questions to make a fair between the online and on-site. Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. I understand you are specialized in WASP. 80% of PNG's population, because PNG in Indonesia, most of them, like we are middle income countries, 80% of the population live in the remote rural areas. How does this WASP program reach the last mile? Is there any strategies, simple strategies that you can share with us? Thank you.
Yeah, it's difficult, not just in PNG, in Indonesia as well. The problem is for especially for poor rural people, they really expect to get money from the government. So we tell them to build toilets, to have also, let's say, pipe water systems, but they rely on the governments, of course, because they are poor. But from my experience, I went to many remote areas of Indonesia. Actually, people, even though rural poor people, if actually they have money to build the toilet, to build their own toilets, and to contribute somehow to the pipe water systems. Actually, they have the money, but the problem is whether we increase their awareness or not. So this is the problems, and it takes time. It is very often that the program from the government, we really want to finish as soon as possible. Let's say we have money for 3 months and we have to build everything in 3 months, and we don't have time to really promote the people to really change their perspective. We don't really have time for this, and then so it will make that people will rely everything from the national government or for the donors, something like that. But actually, they have the money if they have changed their perception. So we have to take time to do promotions, to do health promotions to them. Let's say 6 months, let's say to them, and when they change the perceptions, there is a willingness to pay and willingness to contribute, and then they can contribute to build themselves. So the main goal is we want them to build themselves, not to rely on the outside external stakeholder. So this is the problem. So the strategy is we have to educate people, increase the awareness, create the willingness to build it, and then they can do it themselves. So we don't really give them the money. So I think this is not the best strategy right now.
Thank you. Just little bit on this the access to water, clean water. Like we know in the rural areas, there's water there. Every day people access water, like from not the treated water, but the natural flowing water. How do you think about the terms of health and this water accessibility that they have every day?
Yeah. So as I said, the ultimate goal is we want to have a water source that is free from contaminations. But if you have a kind of surface water, river, lake, for example, or lake, river. And of course, I will say that they are not fully safe. So you have to do household water treatment. So you have to treat the drinking water at your home. But as I said before, people in rural areas, they often do boiling, but there is a high chance of recontaminations if the surrounding environments and your storage is not clean. So you have to consider other aspects as well. So not just treating your water, you have to make sure that storage is clean, the surrounding environment in your kitchen, for example, they are hygienic. So they will prevent the recontamination. So we have kind of multi-barrier protections. And in rural areas, if you have a spring water, you can do also a spring protections. For example, in many rural areas, they use spring. You can protect them to prevent, let's say, animals going inside the springs and pollute it. So there are a lot of methods that you can do also in rural areas to at least prevent the contamination. So, but yeah, we have at least, but the key things is you have to treat your water at home and ensure you have a hygienic conditions in your home.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
Okay, we give one chance for the online participants. Maybe a brief answer is okay, Prof.
Based on condition Indonesia research.
Based on condition.
Waterfall. Okay. Is it safe or not drink directly from the waterfalls? Not. Never drink from the waterfalls because you never know what happens in the upstream. For example, the waterfalls. There's a big waterfalls in Magelang. Apa sih namanya itu ya? There's a big waterfall in Magelang. So, but the problem is above the waterfall there are a big of how do you call this? A paddy field. And they use a lot of fertilizer and high amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. And so never drink directly from the waterfalls. You can drink maybe directly from it if that is the last options that you have. Okay, and you check. Okay, there is no agricultural area above it, so maybe you can drink from it. But I will say that never drink from the waterfalls. And in densely populated areas with poor sanitation, which sampling method is the most accurate for identifying hazardous material in mixed sanitation environment? Mixed, poor sanitation, domestic or mixed. Okay, sampling method. So far we only have one sampling method, so you just test it directly from the sewer. So you have to, let's say you have to map first the distribution system, the sewer conditions in your city, and then you can check which point should I take sample from it, even though they are mixed by the sanitations, by the domestic waste, it's no problems because at the end we want to, the purpose is we want to monitor the conditions in the open sewer. So we just take some points and then take water from it and we bring it to the lab and we will see the results. So there is no really specific sampling method. But if the purpose of the sampling method is we want to check directly the effect of the poor sanitations on open sewer, of course you have to take the sample close from that is close to the house. So it's not really mixed with the rainwater. I hope I answer your questions. Okay. Is there any questions?
Okay, I think that's all. Your talks is very attractive and interesting. Oh, so you bring your own your own bottle. This is an example of water awareness or something like that. Yeah. And although I also curious about your wife, because in my home also use filter machine like that, and I'm still curious why your wife is still doesn't trust. But it's okay, maybe later in the backstage we can discuss. Yeah, I think this water is our concern also in Indonesia. And if you want to ask more, is it okay if we contact you or send email? Yeah, Doctor. Yeah, and the next month there is also a summer course. Yeah, and Dr. Daniel will attend to that course and then give a talks, and maybe you can join. It is in Faculty of Medicine. Yeah. Yes. summer course in July, right? Yeah. Okay, you can search the information of that next month summer course. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel, for your very excellent presentations. Yeah, maybe we will give some small souvenir for you. Yeah. I hope you like it. There is no water here. Okay, a cup of tea. Yes, thank you very much. I hope in the next next event you can share later. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, take a photo.